How would you advise someone on navigating the maze of government agencies and benefits?
Well, you've described it accurately. It really is a maze, and you find people developing really remarkable skills in terms of utilizing these resources. And there are a great number of government resources at the federal, state, and local levels that can really help in this process. And some of them are government programs that you're going to have to interface with anyway, such as Social Security, perhaps the Veterans Administration, if that's an issue for if your loved one is a military veteran. And so, again, this is where the elder law attorney can really be helpful as well. But some of those agencies that it's important to consult, starting with the one that covers many of the bases that we talk about in the book, and that's the Administration on Aging. Very important resource, very helpful, a lot of good online information, and provides great technical assistance for families going through this most difficult process of arranging elder care while dealing with multiple generations, within the family. Complicated stuff, but the Administration on Aging would be one very important resource. Many folks encounter difficulties in terms of living in or maintaining their homes, and as you're having to make decisions about the residential circumstance of your loved one, whether that's looking at transition to an assisted living facility or a skilled nursing facility or whatever it might be. But the Office of Housing and Urban Development is often a good resource for people who are having to consider issues around housing, community living, renovations perhaps to one's existing home. If one needs subsidized housing in one fashion or another, then HUD, Housing and Urban Development, is a very good contact as well. Many families in these situations also seek information about public transportation resources. These are usually at the state or county levels, and we encourage people to consider alternative ways of transportation to transport your elderly loved one if he or she is no longer able to drive, etc. And so public transportation resources, another very important one to check out. I mentioned Social Security before. Social Security in terms of the retirement pension program and what are the rules and regulations associated with your elderly loved one's Social Security benefits. Do they need to be to apply for and receive Social Security benefits? Do they need to make considerations about the benefits that they have? How does that inform financial planning decisions, etc.? The Social Security Administration is a great resource there. And of course, information on both Medicare and Medicaid, depending on what policies your elderly loved one would be eligible for. That's another resource too. So Social Security Administration, getting up to speed on all the new regulations can be complicated, but with good information. And the Social Security Administration is well known as probably the most customer responsive federal agency that there is. They've got terrific information in digestible formats for people to consider as they think about Social Security considerations. Very, very important. A couple of websites through the administration. One is eldercare.gov, really gives you A to Z information on how to consider and arrange elder care for your loved one. Very, very important. Longtermcare.gov, if it's time as both Kimberly and Danielle alluded, if it's time for your elderly loved one to think about a different kind of residential configuration, either for his or her own safety, or perhaps so that they can receive the care that they would need that you're not able to provide anymore in the home. The longtermcare.gov website gives a lot of good information about when to make that decision, how to go about making that decision, etc. So there would be another resource too. Last but not least, unfortunately, elderly people are sometimes victims of unscrupulous business people or people who perpetrate what we call scams. And these are well known. You hear about them all the time. Perhaps if your elderly loved one's intellectual capacity has been diminished, and the ability to make decisions, and might be subject to one of these unscrupulous practices. The Federal Trade Commission is the place to go if you feel that your loved one might be being taken advantage of in any fashion, in any kind of business arrangement. So that's another one that we don't like to think about these things happening, but when they do, it's important to be armed with the information that we need to first make these things stop, and then find out ways to make people account for the things that they've done.